All right. Well, as you know, this government has said the economy and getting the economy right is probably its major focus in a political sense, or certainly national. The senior member of this coalition government has identified that as an absolute priority. And it would be fair to say that in the year since the coalition took office, a probably bleaker picture of our economic position has emerged. We are in a stubborn recession, it would seem. And to stimulate economic activity, we need new policies and new ideas. That has been largely driven by the Minister of Finance, Nicola Willis, who's appeared several times on the program. But the latest initiative is a change to visa status. And I wanted to discuss it because I personally got the feeling in talking to others that it felt a bit desperate, and maybe it was like saying let's import some wealth rather than create some of our own. I'm sure she'll deny that. We're joined now by the Finance Minister, Nicola Willis. Minister, thank you for joining us again.
Thank you. It's great to be on the show.
All right. Now, how many, can you tell me, I presume you did some analysis of this, how many millions will this visa change that says you don't, now I think it's right, you don't have to be able to speak English to come to New Zealand. Is that right?
Well, what we know from history is that when the settings to allow people to invest in New Zealand were more like this in the past, they took in around $2.2 billion worth of investment in the 2 years that it was in place. Whereas in the past 2 years, there's been another scheme in place to allow investment, Labour Party scheme, and that's only brought in $70 million. So our view is you get the settings right, you encourage the world.
So are you saying that in 2 years, this policy, you have advice that this policy will generate or bring in an extra $2.2 billion in investment in New Zealand?
No, because, Sean, it's hard to predict how many people will take up the visa, so we can't be definitive about that. But all I'm saying is if we look back on history, we know that when we've got the settings right in the past, we have attracted.
So this is a shot in the dark?
No, what we have done is engaged really extensively with some of the people who love New Zealand, who come here frequently, who are wealthy.
So how many of them are coming and how much money are they going to invest?
Well, we know that already there have been dozens of people who have expressed interest in this. I would expect that it would be hundreds rather than dozens of people who eventually will sign up for the scheme. But we'll see how it plays out.
Okay, well, just tell me then, what is your hope? What is your hope, or what's your moderate ballpark expectation for how much money this brings into the country?
As I say, I look back on the past and I
So you don't have a target, which does make it a shot in the dark, Minister.
No, it isn't, Sean, because what we expect it to do is to bring in hundreds of millions of dollars.
But you just expect that. You actually don't have any analysis to back up that expectation.
We've got analysis to back that up.
Where is it? Could you provide it to us?
Scheme.
Do you have a report on it?
If you let me answer the question, Sean, I feel like I'm on a different kind of radio station.
Well, no, you're talking to a journalist,
I
Minister.
Get to answer the question.
Okay.
I appreciate that. But if you let me answer the question, our analysis of how many people will come in is based on the fact that in the past, when the settings were more accommodating of investors coming here, we saw significant numbers of them take up a scheme similar, and that was the previous scheme. Then the settings changed, it clamped down, it came down 70 million. So that gives us clear evidence that if the settings are right, more people will want to come.
Can we access that analysis?
Yes, those numbers we released as part of our press release at the weekend, and they are based on immigration data.
Okay, all right, that's great, thank you. Here is a question for you. Okay, let's accept the premise that the changes to English language requirements may result in dozens, you say possibly hundreds of people, high net worth individuals coming to New Zealand or investing money in New Zealand. How easy will it be for those people to buy a residential property here?
Well, they will have the same rules applied to them as are currently in place, which is that people are not able to buy property in New Zealand unless they are a permanent tax resident. So those people...
That's a huge disincentive, isn't it?
Well, what investors tell us is that they are interested in New Zealand because, one, they really like visiting the place, and two, they are interested in the investment opportunities that exist here.
Yeah.
I think you're right. There is a group of investors who would also like to buy a home, but obviously we're keeping those current rules in place.
Why?
That's something...
If you want to get
because
this
that's
money,
something
if you
that's in the
want
coalition
hundreds of people, why don't you say, if we let you in under these new rules, we're also going to give you a special exemption on residential property?
Well, that's something that's in the coalition agreement with New Zealand First. As you may be aware, I campaigned at the election on a policy of releasing that foreign buyer ban because I thought that we could actually get benefits to New Zealand and New Zealanders.
So you'd like to do that, but Winnie says no.
I think that it's something we should keep looking at. I totally accept the point of view that I've heard from people that says if people are going to invest in home here, we want a sense that they're contributing back to New Zealand. I think that's fair. So I think that there's more work to be done looking at how we could get that assurance.
Okay, all right. So we're going to do all this. The other feeling I get is, Minister, are we just importing economic success? And surely the best way to get more money into the country is to have a lower corporate tax rate and allow operating businesses to retain more of their profits.
No, I completely disagree with that characterisation. I was in Canterbury last week and I visited some incredible emerging businesses. One of them called Zincovery, who found a new way to recycle the zinc made in the steel production process. Another one called that was converting protein from plants. And both of those businesses, the number one thing they need to grow right now so that they can expand into new markets, so they can hire new people, is capital. And so if we have more sources of capital into New Zealand, what that actually means is that businesses with great ideas can access the money they need to expand, because they can't always go to a bank and get that finance. They're looking for a different sort of investor. And so for me, this is absolutely about acknowledging we've got great ideas, great entrepreneurs, great exporters in this country. Sometimes what they need to take the next step is a little more cash. And
they might get more cash if we had a more forgiving company tax rate.
Well, look, I'm interested in the tax settings as a whole. And that's because however much tax companies are paying affects their profits, and companies do have choices about where they locate themselves, whether it's here, Australia, or elsewhere in the world. So making sure we don't become uncompetitive in that space is something we should give a mind to. But as I've said, it doesn't just have to be the corporate rate. There's all sorts of rules in the tax system that we're looking at. We've got a number of them on our tax policy work program. But overall, we should try and keep tax competitive.
All right. Have you looked at a really big sort of change? And I'm thinking of Ireland. I'm thinking of the massive revolution in company tax structure in Ireland, which really was the impetus for them getting out of the economic doldrums and driving their economy forward. Do we need to go that big, do you think?